Hey, welcome back everyone. Rob here from Ram Studio Comics. So in today's video, I'm going to show you an approach that I use where I lay out some structure, then I go right to inking over top of that structure, and I feel like it gives me a little bit more of an organic vibe. So I want to show you that. Here's one that I warmed up on. I'm actually making this for a blog post as well. So for those of you that also like written tutorials, you can head over to my website at ramstudiocomics.com, and I'll be updating more of those on the drawing tutorials page as time goes on. Also, if you like course content, I'll make sure there's links in the description box below for that as well. So let's jump in and do today's exercise. So what I'm going to do is first start with something from my brain box, and let's see. And I want to explain the structure-based approach. But I think that at times it's nice to play around with, just going right to drawing basically after you get a little bit of structure in there. So what I'm going to do is first start with the back of the hand. And so what I typically do there is this kind of shape. This is actually the middle knuckle. So I'll place the knuckles like this. That one's probably a bit low, but something like that. So here's the back of the hand, just trying to make sure I get that middle knuckle a little bit higher. Then I add a triangle from this point. This gives me the knuckle down here for the thumb, and really the connection point. The tendons go like this, except for the thumb where, I don't know, it kind of goes like that. Two tendons radiate from the thumb, I believe, but we're not going to get into that right now. We're just going to do the base structure like this. We'll have the hand coming out like this. You can do this kind of stick man finger thing. It's a technical term, by the way. I'm just going to do like the claw. You're scared of the claw. All right, let's see here. And the thumb. Remember, the thumb has one less segment. Called a segment, metacarpal. All right, so there's our hand pose. Oh, and we'll get the wrists in a little bit. And the wrists, I usually use a cylinder, but a lot of people will tell you that's wrong. Use a squared off prism like this. Now, something I immediately see, well, besides the fact that my tendons aren't radiating to the right area, but it is really that there's too much distance right here. Okay, so that's another thing as we're trying to perceive that this hand is dimensional, right? And it's not flat. And so even at this early stage, you really kind of want to maybe move these knuckles in a little bit more. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to just bring that a little bit tighter to the side here so that hopefully I get a little bit more of that curve. So let me clean this up a little bit for you. Kind of reiterate the structure base. So you got your knuckles, and you see I'm still moving these around, still trying to get this relatively close to what I'm looking for. Tendons, simplified obviously version. And, make sure there's gaps in between the fingers. And then at this point, I'll just drop in the cylinders. Save a step here. So we got the ovals for the knuckles, cylinders that need to get smaller and overlap more as they go away from our view. Gap in between the fingers. Same thing. I feel like these are too even as well, so that's another problem with when you draw hands. If they're too awfully even, they start to feel boring. So what I could probably do is drop this pinky down. I mean, it makes sense, it's smaller anyways, right? So let's drop that right down, and then let's get the structure of the thumb, and we'll get right into drawing this bad boy, or inking it. Okay, something like this. I think there's a little divot here, there's a little bump on the back of the wrist right there from the ulna, right? Isn't the radius? Radius is a big one on the medial side, thumb side. Ulna back here, there's a little bump there, something like that. Dip here. There's also a bump here. So The other thing is a lot of people will tell you draw an oval across this way as well. So it's like start with that squared off cylinder, but then get that oval, you know, you get a little bit of a better representation of this area. So there's our structure, and obviously it's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be. We just need, you know, I tend to think of the structure like you're just giving the artwork a little bit of backbone, right? You don't want your artwork to appear spineless. So now let's take that. I'm going to blue line it since I'm using Clip Studio here. And then I'm just going to go right to inking over top. You know, digital inks. I always say, people always correct me. It's not inking. It's digital art, man. Well, to me it's inking, so digital inks. Okay, so now what I like about this approach, though, for one, it's faster. Two, it tends to be more organic. It has more of a creative vibe. It can be more organic. I mean, I guess you could stiffen up on this technique as well. I tend to be a little bit more forgiving with it, with my approach this way, and I like it. It's fun. So give it a try. But you do have to think on your feet a little bit because you're trying to lay in the, not that these are the final lines, because you could go back and just keep erasing. Like I erase with the solid brush, the same brush set to transparent, but I'm trying to at least get pretty darn close to my finished lines as I lay them in. Now another way to think about this and do it is to really just use very thin lines so that you have a lot of room to adjust just based upon that. So for instance, if I keep all these lines nice and thin on my first pass, it's a lot easier to make corrections and see where I'm going with that. Let's do that. I was kind of adding line weight on that other side and it was getting a bit messy. Let's just try to start very thin. But I do want to play around with kind of the bumpiness of again, these technical terms that I throw out there, but the bumpiness of the lines, especially with something like a hand where you want it to feel organic and have like a sense of I don't know, mushiness, not mushiness, but it's got to feel soft in here. It's got to, everything in the body is a balance of hard and soft edges and shapes and forms and all that, obviously, but certain things just look better when they're drawn with a little bit more of a loose style. And just pay attention to your hands. I mean, look at how many little bumps and nooks and crannies and imperfections are there. They're pretty wild looking. Or maybe just mine are, I don't know, but mine are creepy looking, to tell you the truth. I have some creepy looking hands. I will not be a hand model, that's for sure. And I've tried. They just didn't call me back, unfortunately. But so I was like, hey, what could I do? Hey, I'll be an artist. I'll just make YouTube videos and that's how I'll survive. And it's working. All right, so something like that. Okay, tendons. And again, sort of very thin with that. So we can work over this and add all sorts of little details to the work. Okay. Yeah, so now I'm feeling like that thumb was a bit too clunky looking. So maybe that's part of the approach I need to use. Use very thin lines. See, I'm learning as I go, folks. That's what I do here. As I teach, as I learn. Or I learn as I teach, however you want to look at that. But either way, it's working. It's working. We're all getting better in this hive mind mentality of YouTubesville. Okay, so now something like this. All right, so now I want to drop it. Well, actually, no, let me get the little veinage on the back of the hands. So again, here I want to be very bumpy. Get some bumpiness in there. Something like that. Kind of put these wherever you want. Well, no, you shouldn't. You should look at anatomy and see where they go and then stylize it. But for now, I'm just going to throw them wherever I want. Okay, so now I can get rid of my blue line because it's a little bit confusing to look at all of it, I think. But erase back the tendons so it's clear that those are behind the veins. And so now I'm just going to drop in shadows and render at the same time. But it really is a fun way to do this because it's you're kind of having to be a little bit creative on the go, I feel like, where when you're drawing, it's not like you're not being creative when you draw and you sketch and you revisit things. But the only bad thing is you can really get caught in sort of a, like how many times do you do that? And there's times I have redrawn and revisited things. Oh man, you've probably seen it in some of the videos, like over and over again. And part of that is me trying to get to the best version of my art. So maybe this isn't going to be like some great hand. And you're probably not going to look at this and go, that's the best hand I've ever seen. Or the best hand maybe you've even seen me draw. But there's a time and a place for all these techniques, I think. Like if you're working on a tight deadline and you just need to fill up a couple panels with, I don't know, basic shots. I don't know if they need to be the best hand you've ever drawn, but they might need to be the quickest. We're pretty close. And I feel like this is, kind of filling that bit of need that could definitely move a lot faster doing things this way. But there are those times when I just want things to look as good as possible. But there's also those times when I think I'm making things look better and I'm not. And that's never fun, but it happens. Like I'm reworking things over and over again, then I get somebody's opinion. Like, I don't like it. I actually liked it when it was the rough sketch. Like I get that a lot. I'm like, okay, I got to really figure out how to harness the energy of the rough sketch, and then not lose that through constant refinement of the work. Alright, I also want to start getting in lots of little texture marks and different little renderings. Just keep in mind here that one of the best things to think about is line variation. So not just thick to thin, but you got pockets of shadow, you've got some heavier rendering lines, and then you want some really tiny ones by comparison. What I think that does is it helps to provide a sense of scale to something as simple as a hand. So we tend to think that scale just applies to, big landscapes and buildings. But what I find is that you can make smaller panels, again, like a close-up of a hand or maybe an ashtray with a cigarette smoking, just sitting there. Nobody smokes anymore, but you know what I mean, just that kind of shot. But the way you make it look really cool is variation of shapes and details even within that smaller thing. So just picture like you're trying to make even these regular shots appear more grandeur and larger and monolithic, and you can do that with tiny little bits of rendering. So as you see, I'm going to introduce a lot of little line variation. Line weight on the outside obviously helps, really beef up some of those. But again, those little interior textures and hatch work really help to make it, one, more interesting to look at. But again, to me, it kind of gives that feeling that you might be looking at something bigger. So when you have this very simplified version of a hand, you might save that for the the long distance shots. But then when it comes to a close-up, just go crazy with the little bit of grit and detail work. And I don't know, I just find it to be a fun way to approach these types of panels. And I'm going to go ahead and time-lapse this next part just because it's me adding a bunch of little bits of line work. So it's really just more of the same. One of the things I do like about this process too is I'm just using the one layer, and I'm only hitting X on the keyboard to flip from light to dark, and or erasing back, but with the same brush. So I'm using one brush, one layer. It's very simplified in the approach. I like doing that at times because there's just times when, you know, getting bogged down with all the possibilities can be a bit overwhelming. So I think this is just a relaxing way to work sometimes. Like, even though I have all these tools at my disposal, I'm not using them. I'm just drawing. I've even been avoiding the whole selecting and moving things just because it's too easy. And then when I get to drawing on paper, I go to reach for the selection tool, which is just flat out weird. But anyways, hopefully you like this particular type of approach. Hopefully it's showing you something and giving you some ideas. I know I like it. I'll be doing more of it. I've been trying to figure out a way that I can incorporate this into my work, save time, and stay creative. So again, let me know what you think, as well as what you'd like to see in the future. As always, keep drawing, keep having fun, and bye for now.